States could focus on undecided voters over the next 2 weeks.
I believe that our government runs best when most people express their opinions and tell what they want, and I believe we should be led by the voice of the people.
Dilts says he's most concerned about inflation as well as immigration and education. Other local voters expressed similar concerns, while some felt strongly about issues like abortion and health care access. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Bruce Springsteen will be joining Vice President Harris on the campaign trail in the final days before the election. He'll headline 2 concerts aimed at mobilizing voters in battleground states. Former President Barack Obama will also be at a concert in Atlanta Thursday night. There's a second show Monday in Philadelphia. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up just barely 2 points or so right now, and the NASDAQ is up just 16 points right now. And our KSL weather, sunshine and temperatures bouncing up and down. That's next. KSL News Time 101.
It's a priority for us at this station to bring you all sides of a story and to talk about the news fairly, completely.
Get all the facts and be really aware. Utah's Morning News with us, Tim and Amanda.
Weekday mornings 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
I'm Brian Tedesco, CEO of Blaupunkt Americas, the pioneers of the car stereo. Today, we're not just about sound systems. We are revolutionizing the e-bike scene with Blue Dot Bike. Thanks to AmericanEagle.com, our online presence now features a dynamic e-commerce website that showcases the quality and affordability of our foldable e-bikes. And our collegiate e-bikes, just perfect for the college fanatic. These e-bikes offer a new way to experience freedom on 2 wheels, no matter your age. When we needed a top-notch website to match our cutting-edge e-bikes, we turned to AmericanEagle.com. They made the impossible seem easy, tackling digital challenges like pros. Check out the Blue Dot Bike website to see AmericanEagle.com's amazing work in action. Need the best in website and digital marketing solutions? AmericanEagle.com is your go-to. They've been a game changer for us, and they can be for you too. Visit AmericanEagle.com or call 877-WEB-NOW-1. That's 877-WEB-NOW-1.
An emergency can happen any second. Here's a few seconds to think about where you'd go. When you need medical care fast, the closest emergency room is a smart thing to know. Common Spirit Health ERs are your direct path between feeling scared or uncomfortable and feeling better. Find emergency care in your neighborhood at mountain.commonspirit.org.
Jazz games at Delta Center are unforgettable. From the atmosphere, the crowd noise, and of course, the electrifying on-court action. With ticket plans, you can go to as many as 11 games this season. Choose from packages like the All-Star Plan, Weekend Plan, or the Western Rivals Plan, and get what works for you. Come cheer on the Jazz and get your ticket package at utahjazz.com.
Febreze.
So my home is also my office, and before I can focus, every room's gotta be clean. That means tidying up, then spraying my Febreze Air Mist. Ooh, that's fresh. Febreze Air Mist scents are all high quality. They fight any weird funk, and they give my air an instant boost of freshness. So not only does my home smell good, I feel good too. After I Febreze, it's time to start my day.
Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
Everywhere you look, things are getting more expensive. So at Consumer Cellular, we're lowering the price for those 50 and up. Now you can get unlimited talk, text, and data for $30 a line when you buy 2. That's just $60 a month for 2 unlimited lines. So if you're 50 and up, make the switch and save. Come on, you've earned this. Call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com today. Requires 2 lines of service, age validation, and credit approval, subject to system and area limits, taxes, and other fees apply.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. And here's Ricky Meese.
We do have an accident in Davis County with possible injuries. It's right at the intersection, affecting all directions of travel at 200 North and Main Street in Kaysville. Celebrate Taco Tuesday the tasty way at Cafe Rio. Handmade tortillas bring the vibes, slow braised meats bring the punch, and 12 tasty toppings bring the party, starting at just $2.49. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Our high of 72 today jumps up to 77 tomorrow, then drops to 61 on Thursday. Just a slight chance of rain on Thursday. 70 degrees, partly cloudy right now. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com for Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, the headlines, of course, continue to focus on swing states and swing voters within swing states. So the question then that we should be thinking about is, what are those swing voters actually looking for? What are they questioning? And is there a group of those who maybe aren't just in the undecided, but are they just the contrarians who tend to vote against whatever party is in power? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
We hear a lot about the 7 swing states that will ultimately decide who is the occupant of the Oval Office moving into 2025. And amongst those swing states, there are a lot of swing voters within the swing states, and trying to figure out who they are, what they're after, and what they're thinking about. How are they persuadable? Is the thing we really got to get to today. And really thrilled to have joining us back on the program once again, Carly Cooperman, who, of course, is the CEO of Schoen Cooperman Research, global strategic research consulting firm, and the best of the best, and have a great piece in The Hill looking at these swing voters. And Carly, welcome back to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me back.
So here we are. We're 14 days away. We're inside the bubble, to be sure. And I can't imagine I know you're just sitting around with nothing to do for the next 14 days. But I know you've been taking a close look at these swing voters. Get us a sense of who they are. Who are the swing voters in these swing states? And then we'll talk about strategy for each of the campaigns in terms of how they get to them.
Yeah, so we recently looked at polling where we came out of the field and looked at those who say that they're still undecided on who they're going to vote for, or that they have a preference but that they could change their mind. And so, there's a lot of different definitions that people use to identify a swing voter, but right now what we thought is that, in the final 2 weeks of the campaign, these people who truly aren't sure yet who they're going to vote for or who we want to understand their sentiments and what they're thinking. We saw that demographically, these people tend to skew younger, under 40, and they also are more independent or moderate in terms of how they identify ideologically or by party. And also, I think one thing that's really noticeable about these people is that they're generally pessimistic about the country. They're pessimistic about how things are going, a little bit less engaged and less knowledgeable about, the positions the candidates stand for. And they don't really love either candidate. So that's kind of the starting point about these people.
Yeah.
And then what we found, so then just to give you the quick high-level overview is that, looking at who they're going to vote for, by a 5-point margin, they say that they will support Harris, but that's only 34 to 29%. A large percent are still undecided. And when we look in the layers underneath this, it actually seems like a lot of metrics of these voters are kind of more supportive towards Trump.
Yeah, and let's get underneath those numbers, because that's what I thought was so fascinating in your piece in The Hill today, was looking at some of the things where you can say, okay, that looks like it might be an advantage to Harris and the Harris-Walz campaign, and then you look underneath some of those numbers, and you start thinking, well, maybe they're a little more inclined policy-wise to the former president. Kind of break that down for us.
Yeah, so what happens is we also look at the issues that are most important to these voters, and not surprisingly, the economy, inflation, immigration, these issues are top of mind to these voters who are undecided or swing voters. And when we ask who they trust more to address each of these issues, we found that Trump leads Harris on trust by significant margins in all of these issues. And so while in terms of the vote, there's a lean towards Harris, actually, when it comes down to what's important to them and what's driving the day and who they trust, by larger gaps in the overall electorate, these voters say that they trust Trump on these issues than Harris. So there's significant difference in margins there in terms of these issues.
Yeah. So as we look at the strategy now in terms of how each of these campaigns go after it, that gets to be a really interesting look at the numbers in terms of what it is or what the messaging strategy might be or what the messaging strategy hasn't been that have prevented these folks from actually locking in and getting behind a candidate.
Yeah. So one other thing I think is worth mentioning is that we asked voters in terms of concerns about the candidates and, this kind of thing to get at the messaging. And so we found that there was a slightly more plurality of voters, 39%, say that they are concerned that Harris is too far to the left versus 35% say that they're more concerned that Trump is too far to the right. This is one of the messaging things in terms of Harris's perspective that, she needs to be able to convince these people that she is moderate politically. The one thing Harris is going for her with these voters is that they consider her more of the change candidate than Trump. We know that these voters want change. And so in terms of when they think about who represents change, that is Harris for these voters. Harris would need to do more to articulate what she would do in these positions. People don't feel like they know enough about her. She's talked about an opportunity economy, but people have little idea of how she would improve the day-to-day cost of living for them and how she would improve the economy for them. So that's that. But from Trump's perspective, he has this advantage on issues, but he is spending so much time talking about immigration that he really needs to come back to a more economic-centered message because that is something that's going to drive people even more than concerns about immigration and, talking about the cost of living and, tax cuts and just things in terms of inflation and just the things that are impacting their day-to-day. He needs to come back to a messaging story that is going to bring it back to the economy and a little bit less on immigration.
Yeah, that focus is always crucial, especially coming down the home stretch. Where do you spend your time? Where do you give your attention? What do you really emphasize in those waning days? You also mentioned in the piece something that I found just really interesting. And you alluded to it earlier that a lot of these voters, again, swing voters in swing states, that they do have a little bit of a pessimistic view in terms of right track, wrong track. And they tend to be a little contrarian in terms of, who's in power, regardless of which political party. Describe that for us.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. We found among this group of people that about 6 in 10 say that the country is headed on the wrong track. And we asked if things have gotten better or worse or have stayed the same in the last 4 years. 59% say that they think things have worsened in the U.S. over the last 4 years. So it's not totally surprising if you think about it. These people that at the end of the election really aren't sure who they want to vote for. They're discouraged, they're disengaged, they're frustrated with how things are going. So we see that it's not like there's a great deal of satisfaction among voters and among Americans generally, but these people really are frustrated with both parties. I mean, they give negative ratings to both presidential candidates. They're frustrated with what they feel is the status quo with what the political system is generally.
Yeah, and do you get a sense at all in terms of these voters? Are they still likely to show up on Election Day, or are they going to be so exhausted and exasperated that they might just throw up their hands and stay home?
I think it's going to be a mix of both, honestly. I mean, in terms of when we poll, we have filters to take out people who say that they're not likely to vote, but they're still, I think, at the end of the day, and this is a concern among the candidates, that there will be some of these people who are disengaged and might just decide to vote for neither candidate. Now, looking at what the candidates are doing in the last 2 weeks of the election, we see Trump particularly is making a push to try to reach low propensity voters, these people who are frustrated with both, because he's got this anti-systemic, anti-establishment message that to some extent is connecting with some of these people. Whereas you see Harris out there trying to reach more independents and, more moderate Republicans or Republicans that don't really like Trump.
Yeah. And then finally, give us one thing that is a little under the headlines that you're keeping your eye on with 14 days to go.
I'm studying this swing state data very carefully that's coming out. And I'm looking for other signs because these races are so neck and neck. But metrics, beyond the issues, we know what issues are most important to voters right now. And I do think Harris has made some inroads in terms of Trump's advantage on those issues. But I think at the end of the day, this is also coming down to just that gut feeling, how you feel about the candidate. And so questions that speak to, how these candidates fit in terms of, are they too far left or too far right? Do they represent change? Are these the kind of people you feel like could lead? I think those are kind of a little bit more telling, and those things are really interesting when you study these swing state polls that are kind of indicating last-minute shifts that might come down to at the end of the day. I really think it's going to be about that and less about the issues ultimately, because a lot of that is really baked in.
Yeah, fantastic stuff as always. Carly Cooperman, CEO of Schoen Cooperman Research, a global research consulting firm. Always the great strategist. Carly, thanks so much. I know this is a crazy busy time for you. We always appreciate you making time for us.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Good to talk to you.
All right. That's Carly Cooperman, again, CEO of Schoen Cooperman Research, and really some extraordinary things to look at underneath the hood. Swing states, swing voters in swing states, some of who say they've decided, but they still might change their mind before Election Day. What are the issues? And as Carly said at the end there, a lot of that's going to be kind of that gut feel coming down the stretch for a lot of these voters. And we're going to talk about that coming up at 2:05, about the vibe of the election, who has the positive vibes coming down the home stretch the last 2 weeks. A lot underneath the hood, a lot to rethink what we think we know when it comes to this election cycle. And with 14 days to go, there's going to be lots of ebbs and flows. There'll be a lot of messaging that will go in and out. Some will hit, some will miss, and we'll keep you posted because we've got you covered here on KSL. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Number 7.
Intercepted! Tommy Precious picks it up!
That is one lucky number.
The touchdown!
7-0. Congrats to our BYU Cougars. Join the BYU faithful. Listen to Cougar Tracks all this week at 7:55 in the morning on KSL News Radio at 102.7 FM.
Hey, I get it. We all want a stress-less holiday season. With SOTA weight loss, you can stress a whole lot less. With state-of-the-art weight loss, SOTA stands for state-of-the-art, you won't have to stress about fitting into that holiday outfit. You won't worry about how you look in that family photo. You can stress a whole lot less about emotional eating. For me, my SOTA dietitian and coach took all the stress out of losing weight. I lost 37 pounds in 90 days. I've kept it off stress-free for nearly 3 years now. Stress less about potentially dangerous fat loss drugs. Stress less about pills and injections. Stress less about crazy, sometimes dangerous side effects. So you want less stress for the holidays? Then start the stressless way to get rid of those pounds and inches that are currently causing your stress. Let's get rid of that. As I always say, when it comes to your SOTA weight loss journey, there's no time to lose, only time to win. So stress less and start winning by losing that unwanted weight. Have a stressless holiday season with the energy and vitality you want and deserve. Check it out at SOTA Weight Loss. SOTA stands for state-of-the-art weight loss. SOTAweightloss.com.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
Winter is coming, but there's still time to replace those drafty old windows before the cold comes and drives up your heating bill. Just make one call and take advantage of the Advanced Window Products Fall Special. $2,500 off on 10 windows or more, and that's $2,500 off their already low factory direct prices because at Advanced Window Products, they're the factory. Your windows are built in their facility right here in Salt Lake City. You're buying local, and with their lifetime guarantee, you don't ever have to call some faraway state for help. Advanced Window Products is right here, proudly backing up their work, so make one call, save on your heating bill, and get a rebate from the energy companies. Advanced Window Products offers 0% financing. They can even give you amazing new windows with no money down. And don't forget, $2,500 off their factory direct prices, but you have to call now. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, or go to advancedwindows.com.
This is Derek Overstreet of the New Millennium Group and host of Stop Working and Start Living Radio. If you're close to or in retirement and you don't have a tax plan, call us right now, 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. Listen, our country's been spending like never before, and the tax bill is coming soon. If you need an income tax strategy and a financial plan that will get you through the rest of your life, give my team a call, 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. If you want an investment plan that allows you to keep more of your gains and pay less taxes, give us a call, 888-999-6370. My team specializes in the type of plan that will get you retired 3 to 5 years sooner than you thought possible. So, get a no-cost tax analysis by calling 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. My team is standing by now.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, voters started lining up this morning to cast early ballots in this year's election. Second, Bruce Springsteen will be joining Kamala Harris in the days before the election. And third, a new study ranks Utah as the 5th safest state in the nation. Right now, 70 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
As the world becomes more digitized, a fascinating transformation is reshaping how we engage with politics. The rise of social media and digital footprints has created an unprecedented level of scrutiny and accessibility to politicians' lives. And with millennials now entering positions of power, bringing with them decades of online history, we're witnessing the emergence of a new political landscape where the lines between public service, celebrity culture, and personal privacy are increasingly being blurred, if not completely erased. So the question that we need to think again about what we think we know is, what will the future of democracy look like in an always online world? A fascinating piece today at The Dispatch, you can read it at thedispatch.com, about these very online politics and what that is going to mean. Catherine D. is an internet culture reporter and host of The Computer Room, and Catherine joins us on the line. Catherine, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Brilliant piece. This is so fascinating to me. We used to think of, it was about a gaffe moment at a speech or, something that happened when you were in high school or something you wrote in someone's high school yearbook. We have totally blown past all of that with this always online world. Give us a sense in terms of what you've been watching and what we should be maybe thinking again about when it comes to online.
Yeah, so especially for millennials, they were the first digital native generation. So they're always on. I mean, we're all always online, right? And we don't really think carefully about what we're posting because there's no logging on and then logging off. It's just sort of our consciousness broadcast out to everyone. So people, are saying whatever pops into their head in group chats, or they're tweeting random things, or they're getting angry at complete nonsense. And this obviously opens the door to the less than flattering screenshots. And now we're in a position where basically everyone has skeletons in their closet because we're not filtered.
Right.
It's everything that's popping into our head. We're posting, and this presents some issues for politics.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, when someone moves up the food chain in politics or runs for a higher office, that scrutiny gets a little tighter, and now it's getting into spaces that are just really almost in the bizarro world, as people are just digging and digging and digging, and looking at things that were cached or things that were in group texts and chats. Makes it a very interesting vetting process. And I know all of those in the political consulting world, those who do opposition research are having a heyday in a lot of that. But how do we look at that in the proper context? And what should we be thinking about what we start to hear or what we start to recognize, especially, as you mentioned, these up-and-coming politicians who have always been online?
I think part of it is that this information is less meaningful than it might have been in an earlier era. There's so much of it, and we're in a really strange situation where, because people are posting whatever pops into their head, people go through phases that are difficult to contextualize in the physical world. Information that ordinarily would have been super meaningful in a completely physical context is now it's less meaningful. So if someone says something a little off kilter in a chat, right? Like, there's obviously a line, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't. This isn't. You can say and do whatever you like, but I think that we're going to see a lower barrier to entry for what's considered scandalous, just because there's so much of ourselves, and nobody's perfect, right? It used to be that these parts of our personalities and our inner worlds were much more hidden, but that's just not the case anymore.
Yeah, and look back historically, you think of George W. Bush and a DUI when he was in college coming up, and that being such a big thing, or a Bill Clinton. Did he inhale, or did he just not quite inhale it all the way? Those kinds of things, which are now just so far downstream, as you said, kind of a lower bar in all of that. Talk to us for a minute about something else you had in your piece, which was the fandomization of politics. And while we've always had a bit of fan crushes on, a JFK and Camelot, or kind of the Reagan-esque kind of things in terms of celebrity, what does the new kind of fan culture bring to the political space, and what should we be watching for there?
So there's two main things here. First, politicians are leaning into being fan objects, right? AOC gets referenced a lot in this conversation, but she's sort of the perfect example because she really was the first one to lean into this internet personality persona. And it almost overshadows her actual position as a politician, right? Her rise to fame is in large part because she was leaning so far into this personality as a celebrity.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. So people need to be mindful about TikTok, Instagram, whatever social media platform it may be, and they're also voluntarily showing a lot of themselves, right? There's a much more direct line to not just constituents but fans, people who see them like they are celebrities. And then the other side of this is the way people view politicians is more similar to the way that we viewed celebrities in the past. Like, there's one way to look at, in the piece I started off by describing how people were just rifling through J.D. Vance's digital trash. That's the sort of thing you see all the time with like teenagers who are obsessed with, a particular singer, right? It's like this hunger for all this information. It's not necessarily like relevant information, right? It's just trying to get to know them as a person and having an emotional investment in their personality as opposed to their policies, right? And there was always a little bit of that, but the scales have tipped in such a way where representing yourself as a likable or memeable persona is so much more important. And then there's other sort of more obvious things that are downstream of this, which is like merch, fan art, fan fiction, people sort of inventing things about you. Another politician who really had this kind of like weird fandom relationship with Beto O'Rourke. If you remember that like there was a really weird thing going on there where it's like, who remembers what he even stood for?
Yeah.
It was like so much about like how people received him, but in turn how he was engaging with those people as well.
Yeah, no question. And so interesting in terms of how that continues to break down, as you said, some of the merchandise, the communities that form around it, which is always an interesting thing, an important thing for politicians, especially when they're trying to raise money. So all of that becomes so fascinating. This is a great piece. You need to go check this out at thedispatch.com. Catherine D., again, an internet culture reporter and host of The Computer Room. And this is just a fabulous piece. And Catherine, thanks so much for joining us today. Great stuff.
All right. Thanks. Have a great day.
All right, that's Catherine D. joining us, internet culture reporter, host of The Computer Room. And all of this online is really blurring the lines between politics and fandom and celebrity. And I'm not sure it's leading us to better discussions about principle and good public policy. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top local story this hour. 90 families were evacuated from Lehigh Tech Apartments after an explosion at around 4 this morning. Police say they do consider the circumstances suspicious. A husband and wife were injured by debris in that explosion. Some units have been damaged by water from the sprinkler system. The Red Cross is ready to help those people who were displaced by that explosion. Here's KSL News Radio's Jessica Lowell.
Benjamin Donner, the executive director of American Red Cross Central and Southern Utah chapter, is on scene today.
We have individuals, volunteers mostly with the American Red Cross, that are always on standby and prepared to open a shelter, an event like this, or an evacuation center.
Jessica Lowell, KSL News Radio.
Lehigh City Police say it's still not clear when people who live in the building will be able to return to their units. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Former President Trump once again promised mass deportations of undocumented immigrants at a rally in North Carolina. He invoked a federal law passed in 1798 that allows deportations of citizens of countries that the United States is at war with. It was last used to justify the internment of Japanese Americans in World War II. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day right now, 43 points. The NASDAQ is up 41. And our KSL weather, beautiful sunny skies with temperature bouncing up and down. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:32.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
If you need a new roof, there's a reason IWC Roofing is the #1 residential roofing contractor in Utah. IWC has been replacing roofs for 27 years. They are professionals. You don't get some janky subcontractor fiddling around up there. You get experienced IWC employees on your roof, and they finish most jobs in a single day. They're in, they're out, and they power wash your driveway just to say thank you. Now you're wondering about the price. After all, IWC is one of the few Owens Corning Platinum certified contractors in the entire state, but they offer value pricing, and right now, take advantage of their fall special. $2,000 off your quote. And of course, they'll work with you on financing, so call IWC Roofing, the highest rated roofing contractor in Utah, plus $2,000 off. Right now, call IWC Roofing, 801-232-5690. That's 801-232-5690, or go to IWCRoofingUtah.com.
You're busy. We get it. Life moves fast, and there's hardly a moment to breathe. But for the next 10 seconds, this is your time. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Inhale, exhale. Feeling a little lighter? Taking action is one of the most powerful forms of self-care. In 2024, voting is self-care. Visit rockthevote.org and take action in just 3 easy steps. Check your registration, check in with yourself, and check your voting plan. Visit rockthevote.org.
Grammy-nominated Joe Bonamassa, hailed as one of the world's greatest guitar players.
Miles under my wheels.
Blues rock titan Joe Bonamassa.
Still winging at home.
performing live on Saturday, November 16th at the Eccles Theater. Tickets on sale now at liveattheeccles.com. Joe Bonamassa. Every show is a new experience.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Crews have cleaned up the accident in Kaysville at 200 North and Main Street. Salt Lake City PD, though, working on an accident at 200 West and 200 South. Get Mr. Mac's Performance Missionary Package, 1 performance suit, 4 and collar stretch shirts, 3 ties, 1 mission belt, and 1 pair of Echo or Johnston & Murphy shoes, just $595. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Our high of 72 today jumps up to 77 tomorrow, and then back down to 61 on Thursday. There's just a slight chance of rain on Thursday. Right now, 70 degrees, partly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
In an era of increasing global connectivity and persistent social divisions, the concept of human dignity stands as a cornerstone of our shared humanity, even our divinity. Through ongoing conflicts and social challenges, we can build bridges of understanding and preserve human dignity. And it's not just a moral imperative, but a practical necessity for building sustainable, peaceful communities. Rachel Miner is founder and CEO of Bellwether International, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to disrupting the cycle of genocide and creating genocide resistance in communities. And Rachel, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Boyd.
Great piece at Deseret.com today talking about what you learned from genocide survivors and what happens when we fail to protect human dignity. And I know you were in Bosnia earlier this year. Give us a sense of what you experienced and what you learned there.
Thanks, Boyd. Yeah, next year will mark the 30th year since the genocide in Srebrenica. And I went to Bosnia to really understand a couple of things. First, when does genocide end? And second, how are nations overcoming the effects of genocide? So I spent some time with a group called the Mothers of Srebrenica. And as their title suggests, they're all mothers. And they work to basically rebuild their community after the genocide. They're still working tirelessly as we speak. And it was really interesting because I spent time in their home. We had a translator present at times, but often it was just myself and the mothers, and we couldn't really communicate with language, right? They speak Bosnian, I speak English, so I had to learn to communicate in different ways, and I came to understand that really the way we communicate at a most basic level is through human dignity or signaling to another person, look, I want to acknowledge that you have worth. No matter what words you speak, who you are, the color of your skin, how much money you have, where you live. And you can communicate that. You can communicate human dignity without words. You can communicate it with the energy you bring into a room or how people feel when they're with you or how you look at them or your body language or the acts of service that you do to signal to someone that you see and acknowledge the human dignity that's in them.
Yeah, that's such an important lesson. And one of the reasons why gathering and being with people face-to-face is so important. You pointed out that this coalition, this group of mothers, obviously they have been through that horror of having to bury children or siblings or parents or others in their community. And I can't imagine the aftermath of that. But describe for us kind of being in there, sometimes with the translator, sometimes without. And what were the things that created those moments where you could actually celebrate and see that human dignity?
A lot of what I learned was just from observing the Mothers as a coalition. And there's kind of a leader of this coalition. Her name's Manira. And all the other mothers kind of acknowledge her leadership and role in really beautiful ways. And so part of my learning about human dignity was just actually watching what the other mothers would do when Munira would come into a room, or, the way they would prepare a space when she was delivering remarks or answering a call to speak to dignitaries or the UN, or just someone down the street who, while I was there, called and said, Munira, I need help. And without hesitation, she grabbed me, she grabbed two of the other mothers, she grabbed a handful of vegetables out of the garden. We got in the car, we drove to this home, which was just across the Serbian border. So we drove from Bosnia into Serbia. And I watched Munira minister to this other mother, this woman in need. Yes, with food, but she just listened. We just sat there. We just sat there together and listened, and it was a beautiful thing to watch. Right, such a simple act, but this is a woman who worked with the Clintons and the United Nations to establish a Remembrance Day in Bosnia. But all of those grandiose acts, all the incredible things that Munira and the other mothers have done, didn't matter, because in that moment the only thing that mattered to her was the woman sitting across her. And I think that is another way to show human dignity, by being totally present with people and giving them that.
Yeah, I love that, and it is. I think it's the most sacred thing you can give another person is your presence, your whole entire presence, and that's such a powerful thing. You wrote something in your piece. We often reference on this show that a person is not honest just because they haven't had a chance to lie. You wrote that the real test of human dignity is not in moments, when everything's going well, but it's in those tense moments. It's when we're faced with our differences and those stressors. That's the real test. Describe that for us, and then how do we navigate that better?
It's all about learning to hold tension long enough to let human dignity prevail. So I think there's a couple of scenarios where this happens. I'm going to use online interactions as an example, particularly because we're in an election year, and I know a lot of folks are spending time reading online and posting online and interacting with online content. When you come across something and your immediate reaction, or maybe you see a picture of someone, maybe it's a candidate in the presidential election, and your immediate response or feelings are anger, hatred, disdain, or harm. You want to harm or create harm. That is the moment, the exact moment when the test of human dignity is before you. And I think in that moment, you have to hold tension with yourself, with what you're seeing or what you're interacting with. You have to take pause, and you have to evaluate in that moment, am I going to objectify what I'm seeing and degrade the value of human dignity? Or am I going to hold this tension long enough to come back to a place of shared human dignity and say, yes, I look different, I believe different, I may not support this candidate, but in the end, human dignity is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at another human being, and I will preserve that and I'll protect that. Maybe it will change the way you post or interact or respond, but ultimately it brings a level of love and patience, of wisdom that will then allow you to react in a way that is also informed by human dignity. Human dignity does not degrade or attack. It holds tension, and it says we can disagree differently, we can disagree better, and we can, in the end, allow our shared human dignity to be the outcome of whatever this interaction is.
Yeah. Give us one last thought before I let you go, Rachel. You're focused on this whole idea of creating genocide-resistant communities and countries. And I know it's easy for us to sit back here and say, oh, that's just something that happens in faraway lands, doesn't happen here in my neighborhood or in my state or in my country. And yet we're never that far away from any of it, because that unraveling, once we lose that interconnectedness of human dignity, what else should we be watching out for, and what should we be doing differently?
All genocide starts with hate speech. And it starts with hate speech that carries on for so long that it becomes targeted attacks against people or groups of people based on identity. And so we need to really monitor that. And I know that there are widespread efforts in the United States and in other countries to think about this as kind of eradicating hate or hate speech. I'm at a conference right now called the Eradicate Hate Global Summit, where we're thinking about how do we identify these early warnings of hate crimes, they all start with hate speech. They all start with complete disregard for human dignity, complete disregard and repeated disregard, so that suddenly hate speech feels like justified political speech, and then hate speech turned into action. Hate crimes somehow starts to feel like justified political actions or political crimes. So we all need to be vigilant, especially in the age of information, especially when we've never had so much technology and so many tools to communicate how we feel. We need to make sure that those feelings are informed. And even if we don't have access to objective truth or what's really happening in a situation, let it be informed by human dignity. And that does disrupt the cycle of genocide. That prevents genocide, but it prevents everything else that leads up to genocide, which is as horrible, as atrocious as the outcome itself, right? Like, we don't want hate speech. We don't want hate crimes. We can do even better than just preventing genocide. We can prevent a lot of the violence that leads up to those horrible, horrible atrocities. And it really does start with human dignity.
Yeah. Powerful, beautiful as always. This is the crucial conversation, the sometimes uncomfortable conversation, and especially as we approach that 30th anniversary of one of the largest genocides, I think, in Europe since the Holocaust there in Bosnia, and the aftermath of that, the fallout. These are not just lessons for faraway lands. These are lessons for us right here at home. And it does begin with dignity, and it begins with you and me. Rachel Miner, founder and CEO of Bellwether International. You should check that out as well. And a fantastic piece at Deseret.com. Check that out today as well. Rachel, thanks so much for squeezing us in on a very busy day for you today.
Thank you, Boyd. Talk soon.
All right. That's Rachel Miner, again, from Bellwether International. And you may think genocide is long ago or far away. It's neither. It's close, and getting there is a very short hop, skip, and a jump. But the prevention always starts with human dignity, which connects us to divinity, which shows that we're all just fellow travelers here. So we got to do it just a little different and a little bit better. We'll step aside for a quick break. More Inside Sources coming up next.
KSL offers the best daily newsletter in the state. It's the 3 things you need to know. Every weekday, we deliver quality and relevant content to your inbox. No ads, no spam, just the 3 things you need to know to be informed about the world around you. Subscribe today. Visit KSLNewsRadio.com or text the word inbox to 57500. That's inbox to 57500.
This Friday, join KSL News Radio and NPS from 10 to 1 as the movie show stops by. Then, browse and uncover what makes NPS so great. With 4 locations, NPS takes a new inventory every day. Then, they check all competitors' retail pricing before marking items down 20 to 70% off. You're invited to visit the movie show this Friday from 10 to 1. And that's the first step to discovering NPS. Visit NPSstore.com to begin your own NPS adventure. NPSstore.com. When you choose Performance Automotive in Bountiful, you're choosing selection, convenience, and exceptional service. 4 locations: Performance Ford Lincoln, Performance Honda, Performance Toyota, and Ford Truck Country. All dedicated to delivering you the best auto experience anywhere. Looking for your first car? Maybe you want rugged power or the stylish ride of your dreams. New or used. See it all at PerformanceBountiful.com. PerformanceBountiful.com.
Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors. Did you know that we offer 3 distinct styles of gutter protection? Each one meant to handle a specific leaf problem. You might not even know there are different styles of gutter protection, but there are. And if you pick the wrong one, it could be a huge waste of money. Now, the big gutter guard companies won't tell you this. They try to sell you a one-size-fits-all gutter guard. And it could be completely wrong for the amount and types of trees and leaves you have. Not RGS Exteriors. We understand which kind of leaf problem needs which kind of gutter guard. We'll do an in-depth evaluation to assess the types, locations, and numbers of trees in your yard. Based on that data, we match your home to the right gutter guard. So don't risk wasting money on the wrong gutter protection. For a free evaluation and estimate, call RGS Exteriors at 801-280-3110 or visit rgsexteriors.com. That's 801-280-3110 or rgsexteriors.com.
The Management Minute is a service of the MBA program in the John M. Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University. I'm Scott Hammond. Words used by ambitious politicians are making their way into the workplace and poisoning collaborative relationships. We are quick to call an inaccuracy a lie, label someone who disagrees with us an enemy, and invoke the rhetoric of conflict by calling every challenge a fight and using every mistake as a reason to fire someone. Good leaders lower the temperature, listen carefully to criticism, and use the language of collaboration to build common ground. Learn more about good language and good leadership in an MBA program at Utah State University. Go to utahstatemba.com. That's utahstatemba.com. I'm Scott Hammond. Hope to see you in one of our classes.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the Red Cross says it's ready to help dozens of people who had to evacuate their apartment building in Lehigh after an explosion this morning. Second, about 260,000 adults in Utah are not registered to vote. Third, former President Trump citing a federal law passed in 1798 as justifying his plan to deport undocumented immigrants. 70 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
14 days out, we continue to look at the presidential election portion of the program, and both the former president and the current vice president's campaigns can't afford to lose their coalitions or core base of voters this election cycle, especially in those crucial swing states that we've been talking about. A new study from Arizona Christian University shows that levels of discontent among religious voters could be costly to the former president and cost him some important votes in those swing states. So we want to explore that just a little bit in terms of how many people of faith will show up and turn out in the polls, and how many are going to withhold their votes coming into this election cycle. Becca Congdon, of course, is a deputy managing editor at Reason, and a great piece at Reason.com today talking about the religious vote waning and the trouble that could cause for the former president. And Becca, welcome to the show.
Hi, Boyd. Thanks for having me.
So let's dive into this. Great piece as always at Reason. And as you talk about those people of faith, give us kind of the definition that you're functioning off of in terms of who these people are and what they're likely to do come the first Tuesday of November.
Yeah, so the study was put out by George Barna and his team at the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University, and they defined a person of faith as anyone who associated with a recognized religion such as Christianity, Judaism, Mormonism, and Islam. And what they found was that there's significantly lower rates of enthusiasm than just about any other time, but especially since 2020, and that a really high percentage of them are looking at sitting this one out. He breaks down, the researchers break down that the who's sitting out is really changes depending on what denomination you're talking about and things like that, but across the board, from Catholics to evangelical Christians and to just more general people who attend church on a regular basis, all of them are trending to look that millions in each group are not planning on voting at this point.
Yeah, and so as you see that play out, what are some of maybe the subsets of some of those in terms of the breakdown, and what is it that each of the campaigns are trying to do, the Trump campaign in particular, to shore up that support or to make sure those people who might be inclined a certain direction actually do show up and vote on Election Day?
Yeah, so the Christians who regularly attend church, people who identified that way, 32 million are expected not to vote. That includes 14 million who are specifically identified as evangelical Christians, who are considered really a core base for Donald Trump, and an additional 19 million Catholics who really kind of split on being typically more voting Republican or voting Democrat. But the study has definitely caught the eye of a lot of people who want to make sure that Trump and his campaign are aware that this could be really bad for them. Like I mentioned, the lead researcher on the study, George Barna, he was on the Charlie Kirk show talking about this. Several pastors on social media and other places have been bringing up, like, hey, this is a big deal. One of the people that I mentioned in the study, who I think it caused a little bit of a storm this last week when he mentioned it, was Eric Metaxas, who said, if your pastor isn't insisting that you vote, that's the same thing as preaching about the blessings of abortion. And if you go to that church, you share in the guilt. So there's some guilting going on, but there's definitely just a feeling that they really need to do what they can in the next couple weeks to get people from the pews to the polls.
Yeah, absolutely. And you pointed out in your piece the Johnson Amendment, which is what prevents churches and organizations that are not nonprofit in that classification from doing the politicking. And it's one of those that has never had a lot of weight behind it. I remember watching some Senate races in the Deep South back in 2012, and I don't think they'd ever heard of the Johnson Amendment as to what was coming over the pulpits down there. Describe how that's playing out today. Some organizations are being very adamant in terms of not endorsing or not getting into that political space at all, staying very clear. Others are getting more and more comfortable saying they can brush up against that line.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. The Johnson Amendment really has never had a lot of teeth as far as, it's kind of both sides of that issue are using the First Amendment to back up their points. I'm saying that clearly, we need to protect the separation of church and state. And others are saying, well, yes, but free speech. And so there's a balancing act with the Johnson Amendment that has pretty much meant it doesn't get enforced very often. There are evangelical churches and organizations that actually annually they encourage a day of deliberately violating the Johnson Amendment. But as you mentioned, there are people who are really trying to turn the page on this and get to a place where the Johnson Amendment, if it's going to remain the law of the land, that we're actually enforcing it. And the one that I mentioned in my piece is the Freedom from Religion Foundation, who, they've definitely commented on things like this before, but recently they asked the IRS to investigate Lake Point Church in Texas, which is a large mega church in the Dallas area. Because a few weeks ago, their pastor, Josh Howerton, preached a sermon called How to Vote Like Jesus. Pretty on the nose. People who were there said, oh, he didn't ever say how to vote, but, there's definitely
some clear things there.
There's implication there for sure. And, that's not by any means like just a one church thing. Right. I'm the daughter of an evangelical pastor in the South. I am very familiar with the ways that the Johnson Amendment is maybe, in the back of the mind somewhere. Let's just couch this slightly differently, but it's not typically something that churches are too worried about right now.
Yeah, give us one last thought, Becca, before we let you go, in terms of what you think is going to play out in the next 14 days, and is there just a group of religious voters that are just so exhausted and so exasperated with both sides that they won't show, or those that are exhausted and exasperated, but that's going to make them more determined to show? What are you seeing?
I really think it could go a lot of different ways still. The political rhetoric in this country all the time, but especially leading up to elections, can be so inflammatory and so really can make a voter feel the urgency. How many times do we hear most important election of our lifetime? And, maybe you've heard it enough times to where that doesn't really faze you anymore. But for a lot of people, I think it'll be kind of a game time decision on if they decide to actually go out and vote. And, I do have a lot of empathy for people who are your very traditional conservative Republican voters who they're not really anywhere near wanting to switch and vote Democrat. But, in 2016, it was one thing to be able to say then, give Trump the benefit of the doubt. And you never know, you're not electing a pastor. But after 8 years of having to defend to their friends and family members everything that he's done, everything that he said, I think you really hit it on the head when you just said, they're so exhausted. It's exhausting trying to be really involved in either side of politics right now. So it will be interesting to see if the pastors or, some of these people online kind of light the fire, or if this is just going to be one where, you guys have to go at it without your faithful ones.
Great perspective. Becca Congdon, Deputy Managing Editor at Reason. Check her piece out at reason.com. Becca, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Great perspective there. Important perspective, because whether you can't vote for one or the other, you can always vote third party. You can always write a name in, because remember, it's an expression of what matters to you. We'll come back with hour number 2 coming up next.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Just 2 weeks before the election, Phil Lyman is going to the U.S. Supreme Court with his complaint about Utah's nomination system. Lyman won the vote at the state Republican convention, but lost the primary in the governor's race to Spencer Cox, who got on the ballot with voter signatures. Lyman is running as a write-in. About 260,000 Utahns aren't registered to receive a ballot in this year's election. KSL News Radio's Alessandra Gurr has the numbers.
The latest voter registration statistics show that just under 1.8 million Utahns are registered as active voters for this election, which is about 100,000 more active voters than there were last year. Now, looking at the total population of the state's adults, which is about 2.3 million, that means there are over 508,000 Utahns who are either not registered at all or are inactive voters this year. And it's a pretty even split, with about 10,000 more Utahns not registered than those who are simply inactive. I'm KSL News Radio's Alessandra Gurr.
Our top national story this hour from ABC News. There's a big 3-day global financial gathering kicking off in Russia now. President Vladimir Putin hosting the so-called BRICS summit. In attendance, several countries, and about 20 of them, actually. Their goal is to move away from a world financial system dominated by the United States. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average has slipped back into negative territory, but just by 6 points. The NASDAQ, though, up right now about 33. And our KSL weather. We have sunshine and temperatures that will warm right up tomorrow. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:01.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
I'm Bob Burke, founder and chairman of Burke America Parts Group, a family of brands that includes RepairClinic.com, an appliance and HVAC parts solution company that's grown into an international brand. Before AmericanEagle.com, we partially launched a new technology platform developed by another firm. American Eagle helped take our technology to a whole new level with digital marketing, software development, and business insights into our key markets, appliances, HVAC, and outdoor power equipment, and did so both on time and on budget. AmericanEagle.com has the resources, experience, and talent needed to produce solutions. Our new technology platform, developed by AmericanEagle.com, has produced tremendous results with higher traffic, conversion, engagement, and online revenue. If you have any home repairs you need to take care of, check us out at RepairClinic.com. If you need a world-class website or technology project, then I would highly recommend AmericanEagle.com.
Call AmericanEagle.com at 773-NETWORK. That's AmericanEagle.com, 773-NETWORK.
Don't you deserve health care you can count on? Well, you can count on United Healthcare with Medicare plans that fit your life today and as your needs change tomorrow. You can enjoy reliable coverage and low out-of-pocket costs with a Medicare Advantage plan from United Healthcare. United Healthcare Medicare Advantage plans. Made for Utah, trusted everywhere. The Medicare annual enrollment period ends December 7th, so go to uhc.com/Medicare today.
Hi, this is Doug Wright with yet another great experiment you can try right there at home. I want you to take 4 bags of water softener salt. Lift 3 of the bags with one hand, good luck on that, and 1 bag with your other hand. Now, if you're like most people, you'll probably find that 3 bags of salt weigh about 3 times as much as 1 bag of salt. And that's an important thing to keep in mind when you're shopping for a water softener. You see, Connecticut of Utah, an authorized Connecticut dealer, their water softeners are so well designed, they use only only 1 bag of salt for every 3 that other water softeners use. Now, I can't speak for you, but I'm not a fan of lower back pain, and as our little experiment has hopefully demonstrated, carrying that 1 bag of salt, it's a lot easier on your back than carrying 3. That's just one of the many reasons you should look into water softeners from Connecticut of Utah, an authorized Connecticut dealer. To learn more, call Connecticut of Utah, 801-576-8600, or go to softwaterutah.com.
It's official. KSL Sports is your official radio home of the Utah Hockey Club. When the puck hits the ice this fall, you'll hear every goal, every check, and every tension-filled moment on the KSL Sports Zone. Plus, let your voice be heard on the Utah Hockey Club Fan Forum on KSLSports.com, your exclusive home of the NHL and the Utah Hockey Club in Utah is KSL Sports in 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We're back to a quiet drive on our valley roadways, but Weber County drivers, just another reminder, the North Ogden Divide is closed from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily until work is completed for routine maintenance in that area. We'll let you know when the divide is open again, but again, just remember that if this is a road you normally take at those hours, you do need to plan an alternate route. Celebrate Taco Tuesday the tasty way at Cafe Rio. Handmade tortillas bring the vibes, slow braised meats bring the punch, and 12 tasty toppings bring the party, starting at just $2.49. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
We're close to our forecast high of 72 today, and that could rise to 77 tomorrow, then drop to 61 on Thursday. There's just a slight chance of rain on Thursday. Right now, 72, partly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com for Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson
On Utah's home for elevated conversation.
Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
As the 2024 presidential election enters its final 2 weeks, there's a palpable shift in momentum, and it's created two starkly different moods within America's major political parties. So while Republicans are riding a little bit of a wave of optimism that's been fueled by some favorable polling trends and some different forecasting models, Democrats find themselves grappling with very familiar electoral anxiety despite their candidate being in the lead. So with both campaigns leaning heavily into the vibes of this election, the question remains whether either the Democrats or the Republicans' emotional surge will actually translate into real live votes that can be counted in crucial independent states. The election between the vice president and the former president has become not just a contest of policy positions and leadership styles, but a test whether partisan enthusiasm can actually bridge the gap to undecided voters. Let's begin. And so as we look at where we are on all of this, of course, it's interesting with just 2 weeks to go. There was a great piece in the Dispatch today talking about this being a vibe election. Our good friend Chris Steyerwalt wrote the piece and broke it down for us, as he does such a great job of doing, and looking at this whole idea of the vibes. Of course, when Vice President Kamala Harris became the nominee for the Democrats, and it was kind of a vibe feel. Suddenly there was some momentum, some wind at the back for Democrats, and that catapulted her into being the presumptive nominee before their convention. It also unleashed a avalanche of campaign cash, which added to this vibe. You add to that a convention bounce, which typically comes regardless of which side of the aisle you're on there, and it felt very much like things were moving the vice president's direction and that her campaign would be able to ride that vibe all the way to the first Tuesday of November. So really interesting. Vice President Kamala Harris's lead over former President Donald Trump is at just 1.2 points right now. nationally. That's very much inside the swing state shift that has often caught Democrats, especially in the last couple of decades. So that's an interesting thing where it makes a lot of Democrats nervous, where they feel like they have the momentum going into the fall, and then suddenly they find themselves on the short end of the stick when it comes to Election Day. Harris's margin looks really small compared to where Vice President Joe Biden's was when they clashed with former President Trump in 2020. Joe Biden was up 7.6 points compared to the 2.2 points that Kamala Harris is currently registering at. So there's some interesting things going on. Republicans are experiencing a little exuberance, feeling like the momentum has shifted. Democrats that tend to despair at this time of year anyway and wring their hands, wondering if they can hold on long enough or if they have enough to get across the finish line. And, of course, the interesting thing to all of this is how it all plays out in terms of the undecided voter or the independent voter. Now, those voters are less likely to buy into the momentum or the vibe feel that this is whether it's the joy of the Harris campaign or whether it's the economic fortitude of the Trump campaign. They're not buying into that. And so that's always an interesting thing to really look at in terms of who's going to get moved by these feelings. Chris Steyerwalt described it as a vibological misunderstanding. So this is what I want to describe to you. So if you're thinking you have figured it out and you know where things are going, one, that's highly unlikely. I don't know that anybody really gets it. So here's the way that Chris Steyerwalt described the vibological misunderstanding of where we are 14 days from election. The formerly anxious and angry Democrats were the voters who were behind Vice President Harris's initial surge. And what appeared to them to be broader momentum was actually just an early convention bounce. When she replaced President Biden at the top of the ticket, Democrats reunited, and they were filled with those joyful vibes about Kamala Harris being in the race and her being at the top of the ticket. So the challenge, though, is the independent voters, the persuadables, they don't tend to buy into all of that. So as the Vice President Harris summer surge started to stall a little bit, then everything starts to change. And people start to wonder, does she really have the momentum? Has she stalled? Why? And so on. It wasn't that Vice President Harris was never really switching voters from the Trump side to the Harris side. She was really just re-engaging a lot of those Democrats who'd sort of thrown up their hands and were just kind of frustrated with former President Biden's struggles and what seemed to be a doomed campaign and failure in November. Now, it's interesting, the Republicans who think they now have that vibe and feel should also be cautious and careful. And interestingly enough, this is why campaigns always repeat themselves. A lot of people complained about Vice President Harris trying to ride the vibe to win the election. There was a lot of criticism about her not engaging with the media, not doing any serious sit-downs, not really getting out and doing the retail politics. Well, that's all shifted now because she doesn't feel like she has the vibe or has the momentum. And so she is doing more media. She did a stand-up conversation with reporters yesterday. And she's back engaged in that retail politics. And in a fascinating way, the Trump campaign is no longer giving any interviewers other than just kind of the podcast version, not serious. He's not willing to debate again. And on the stump, he's just kind of doing his song and dance routine. So the question then, will the Vibe campaign or the Vibes only campaign of former President Trump have any more staying power than the Vibe campaign of Vice President Harris did over the summer? In many instances and in many ways, these just are mirages and pleasant distractions of thinking that everything is going great and that your team is winning and you have the momentum and you have the good vibes, and that's going to carry you all the way to the finish line and to the victory. And I would say on both sides, from a strategist standpoint, that's a dangerous place to play. And it's why I think we do need to get back to some of the more serious kinds of conversations, not about vibes and feelings and joy and who has momentum, but policy positions and principles and leadership, the things that aren't just about a good vibe, but about what's actually best for the country. Because I actually believe when it comes to the persuadable voters, when it comes to the independent voters, when it comes to those voters we've been talking about today, those swing voters in swing states who are deciding whether or not they'll even show up and vote, they're not going to do that based on a vibe or a feeling. They want some substance, not just style. And for both the Harris campaign and the Trump campaign, in a narrow, tightly contested race, it is going to come down to who doesn't just have the sizzle, but who has the substance of real policy that I think will carry the day in the end. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. We're just 13 days away from the historic 2024 election.
I'm running for governor because you deserve partisanship, not unchecked power.
It's been an honor of a lifetime to serve as your governor. We've accomplished so much together.
Do your homework and get your ballot in the mail. Election week is coming, and we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
And now a minute of kindness brought to you by One Kind Act a Day. One Kind Act a Day has a program at the State Correctional Facility. Part of this involves having the inmates recognize and celebrate kindness by handing out Caught Being Kind cards. They do that to each other. One inmate described it this way. He said, "I'm known for speaking my mind no matter what it is. But when I went to give away a Caught Being Kind card for the first time, I was speechless. I didn't know what to say, and all I wanted to say was, thank you. The first card was so hard for me to do, but every card after has become easier." He said, "I love them now, and I've noticed a big difference in how I see others." You see, kindness can flourish in any environment, but it has to begin with each of us. Find out more about how you can be involved online at thepowerofkind.org. That's thepowerofkind.org.
My name is Brian King, and I'm running to be your governor because Utah is headed in the wrong direction, and we can do so much better. If you're frustrated by politics today, if you feel like politicians aren't listening to you, if you're looking for something different, for a leader who prioritizes common sense and bipartisanship, you have a place with us in this campaign. Join us and vote for Brian King for governor by November 5th. For the better.
Paid for by Brian for Utah.
Hey, do you feel like you need a nap after your nap? Well, lugging around extra weight isn't just exhausting, it's also putting your health at risk. Here's a way to reduce your risk of obesity-related illnesses. SOTA Weight Loss, SOTA. No injections, no hunger, just amazing results that last. John Smith, you get up early just like I do.
I do, man. I get up at like 3:30 a.m., and by that I mean 4:30. But yeah, before I started SOTA Weight Loss about 6 weeks ago, I was dragging by the afternoon. But I've lost 30 pounds in 6 weeks.
And I let go of 70 pounds in 5 months. You get fast results, and the best part, John, is doing it without injections, pills, medications, or crazy exercising.
Yeah, no surgery, no side effects. It's just better food at better times of the day.
People will notice how you look different, and we've got the proof at sotaweightloss.com. That's SOTAweightloss.com. Go there, click request a nutritionist callback, and within moments you can start the same journey that John and I have found great success on, because SOTA is, say it with me, John, state of the art.
Order for Jennifer C.
Is this my double shot, double cream, double froth, double pump, double hot, double whip, double sleeve?
Yeah. Can you handle that much caffeine?
Hey, did you know Discover automatically doubles all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year?
Well, I do now.
Seriously, did you know Discover automatically doubles all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year?
Yeah, you just said that.
Did you say I just said that?
Yeah, I'm cutting you off.
Did you say you're cutting me off?
You earn, we match. Unlimited cashback match. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.
Febreze. So my home is also my office. And before I can focus, every room's gotta be clean. That means tidying up, then spraying my Febreze Air Mist. Ooh, that's fresh. Febreze Air Mist scents are all high quality. They fight any weird funk, and they give my air an instant boost of freshness. So not only does my home smell good, I feel good too. After I Febreze, it's time to start my day. Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Tim and Amanda.
One of the things I love about radio is that we are all hearing it at the same time. One of the differences between that and just scrolling on your phone is that I don't know when that story was posted. Maybe an hour ago, maybe 3 days ago.
To your point about who wrote it, where did it come from, and is it dated information? Our hope every day is that we can provide a more broad spectrum of information on a single topic that you can then take and make decisions on your own.
Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Phil Lyman isn't giving up on his illegal challenges in the governor's race. This time he's taking his case to the U.S. Supreme Court. Second, Utah has about 1.8 million registered voters and 500,000 who are either unregistered or inactive. Third, Russia, India, and China among the nations talking about replacing the worldwide financial system dominated by the United States. 71 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. Utah's making great strides in our healthcare industry as a new partnership between One Utah Health Collaborative and the Governor's Office have announced a partnership that will promote a Utah model of healthcare, providing high quality and affordable care for patients. Really thrilled to have joining us on the line today John Pullman, who's the Director of Innovation for One Utah Health Collaborative. And John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Boyd. Glad to be here.
Really exciting announcement coming out between One Health Collaborative and Governor Cox's office that announced the adoption of this Utah model of care. First, kind of give us the backstory in terms of the need for this, and then we'll get into the specifics of what it actually is.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity. I think the current path of our healthcare system is unsustainable, and I describe it as kind of a low pain. And I think a lot of patients will tell you they have some frustration with medical bills that extends beyond patients to employers, that extends beyond employers to state government policymakers who are trying to pay increasing prices. It's not just cost, it's also quality and trust that patients kind of navigate. My sister has a chronic condition and she spends 15 hours a month just trying to navigate the system. And a lot of clinicians have frustrations too, nurses, doctors. So I think there's really common consensus that our healthcare system, as great as it is in Utah, could be better. So we need to do something, and it's complicated. Healthcare is a fifth of the economy, so getting everyone together around a table and working on it is challenging. But that's exactly what we've been trying to do. Governor Cox announced this 2 years ago and said, "Hey, look." Rather than being a government-driven or really government-mandated reform to a healthcare system, we've seen a lot of those over the years. Let's create something together, independent entity, public-privately funded, publicly-privately led, and talk about what we want our healthcare system to grow into in the next 15 years and work together to do it.
Yeah, and I love that. And I love the fact that it was a Utah model based, that it wasn't just a top-down government mandate, but it was really getting all the right people around the table in one of those, hey, let's talk, let's explore this together kind of moments where you can get that improvement, you can get the creativity and all of those things. And so give us a sense in terms of what this looks like and what it will actually do in terms of care here in the state of Utah.
Yeah, well, it's I would say it's an elaborate vision statement or mission statement, and those are just words and they tend to be a sentence. We went down a little bit deeper to say, well, what are the values of Utahns? And the process that I didn't describe was working with Envision Utah to really understand from Utahns, what do they want their healthcare system to look like? From that data, we got back some clear, affordable, high quality, trust, no surprises there. But we pulled out of that 7 different attributes that people, that really patients and even the stakeholders themselves felt our healthcare system needed to have. And I can rattle those off. It's having a healthcare system that's accessible, that's efficient, that's focused on the person, that's prevention oriented, that optimizes our workforce, that rewards outcomes and is transparent, all haloed around with a sense of innovation. And that might sound intuitive to a lot of people, like, oh yeah, of course our system should be like that. It isn't like that in so many instances now. So it's really getting people aligned around working towards the same end.
Yeah, and I think some of those things are so vital in terms of the outcomes, and I love those two pieces of outcome driven, and then also the preventative side, which I think a lot of people say, hey, why don't we spend all this money on the back end? Why don't we do some of this on the front end? Give us a sense in terms of what you heard and what you hope to see moving forward in those two spaces in terms of prevention, and then of course really being focused on what are the outcomes of all of this.
No, I'm glad you called those out. It is what's sad is how much our healthcare system costs. I mentioned a fifth of the industry or a fifth of our economy goes to healthcare. So much of that could be avoided with upstream instances. Some of that is healthy lifestyle, and I think you and I all know we could do a little better in how we live. But cancer screenings and just getting those annual wellness visits and catching things early can make such a difference, not only in patients' lives and the rest of their lives, but also for total costs, cost reductions. On rewards outcomes, I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize in our healthcare system. It's inherently a volume-driven point. So that means our economy. So that means the more you do, the more you get paid. And it's not that there's a lot of people out there trying to give unnecessary care, but there's just not incentives to move upstream in the same way that there is to do downstream expensive care. So it's really bringing people together to say, okay, how do we do that? How do we look at this differently? And with Utah's growth, we have to grow a healthcare system anyway. So volume isn't as much of a deal. We need to work on really rewarding outcomes in a way that prevention is the corner of that.
Yeah, and give us a little sense in terms of that trust and transparency space. I think of all the things we deal with, I think that's probably the most challenging for most people who've received care or who are getting ongoing care is navigating kind of that labyrinth of who to call and what does the bill mean and what am I being charged for and not being able to understand that. What did you hear? And then kind of what's the vision forward in terms of how you change the game in that space?
Well, I appreciate you catching the connection between those two because that actually surprised us initially when we looked at the data to see trust rise to the top so high. I mean, affordability, cost wasn't surprising, quality wasn't surprising, but trust, and we trust our doctors, and yes, there are people within the medical system that we do trust, but people's experiences often they have negative experiences where they become less trusting of the system, and that usually comes from being confused when they get a bill that's a single dollar line item and they have no idea what added up to this extraordinary price. Or they didn't realize that they were out of network, or they didn't realize the anesthesiologist was out of network, even though everything else was in network. And those types of ambiguous and complicated components of it do erode that trust from patients. I think this is really a time in which we need to take steps and actions to, as you increase transparency, you really will increase trust with patients. And I think the medical community understands that now.
No question about it. And this is one of those things that is a lot of hard work and heavy lifting, a big bite, a long chew, far away from cameras and microphones and any of those things. But really through this year-long statewide collaboration, has come up with so many things in terms of hearing and sensing and then being able to envision what can come next. John Pullman, Director of Innovation for One Utah Health Collaborative. Again, an important announcement coming out today from One Utah Health Collaborative in partnership with Governor Spencer Cox. The announcement today is the adoption of the Utah model of care. That happened at Utah's state capitol earlier in the day today. And John, thanks so much for your perspective and insight on this. We look forward to seeing this continue to move out and continuing to make a difference for Utahns when it comes to healthcare. Thanks for joining us today.
Of course. Thank you, Boyd.
All right. Again, that's John Pullman, Director of Innovation for One Utah Health Collaborative. And this is one of those things that's not an easy one to do. You got to get the right people around the table, and then you got to get the right people away from the table to go do the hard work and heavy lifting to really develop an innovative model based on the research, on having the right conversations with the right people, finding out what's happening in the healthcare system, what's happening at the patient level, and everything and every point in between. And this really is the Utah model at its best. We do a great job of bringing all the stakeholders together and having the right conversation and then getting creative and innovative in terms of how do we do this different, how do we do it better so that we can improve trust and transparency, that we can focus on the upstream issues like prevention, that we can reward outcomes rather than just activity. Those are all crucial things, and that's what the Utah model is all about. All right, we'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top local story this hour. 90 residents evacuated from the Lehigh Tech apartments after an explosion around 4 this morning. Police say they do consider the circumstances suspicious. A husband and wife were injured by debris in that explosion. Some units were damaged with water from the sprinkler system. The apartment management is allowing displaced people to stay in unoccupied units. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Millions of Americans have already cast ballots in the race for the White House. The candidates for president and vice president were all over the country this week. Governor Tim Walz was in Wisconsin taking a shot at former President Donald Trump, who had stopped by at McDonald's for a photo op this week.
He missed an opportunity, though. Being at McDonald's, he looks much more like Ronald McDonald than the clown that he actually is.
Trump spoke to a Latino group at his home in Florida, used the occasion to criticize support for transgender men in women's sports.
Has anybody approached you and said, we want to really fight hard so that men can play in women's sports? I don't think so.
Trump called it a sickness that has to be ended. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average ended the trading day down 6 points. The NASDAQ was up 33. The S&P 500 was up about 3. And our KSL weather looks like sunshine today and tomorrow, and warming right up. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the 9s, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
In 2024, dating is a disaster. We've been ghosted, breadcrumbed, stuck in situationships. Hi, I'm Debbie. I'm Caitlin. Welcome to our new podcast, Dating at Her Age. Dating has been so dicey for us, so we asked KSL, can we launch an all-new podcast about it?
People use these dating apps. You're not really dating when you're on the dating app.
Dating at Her Age, brought to you by Mountain Home Services. A new episode drops every Thursday on KSLNewsRadio.com.
The Salt Lake Chamber is Utah's voice for business. Okay, that sounds great, but what does it really mean? Well, as Utah's largest and longest-standing business association, they support and champion community prosperity throughout the state. And if you're in business, well, that's a very good thing for you. Be sure to listen to the Chamber's Speaking on Business, weekdays at 7:20, 11:55, and 5:20 p.m. on KSL News Radio.
Are you within 5 years of filing for Social Security? Get this. 96% of Americans forfeit an average of $111,000 in Social Security income. And it's all because they filed for their benefits at the wrong time. Learn how you could avoid this with a free, customized Social Security analysis from Boss Retirement Solutions, 5-time winners of the Best of State Award. If you've saved more than $200,000 for retirement and have not filed for Social Security, schedule your free analysis now by calling 801-896-9622. You know, for some people, filing for Social Security early could result in more net income in retirement. Discover how you could get the most income from Social Security. Call 801-896-9622. 801-896-9622.
Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. And here's Ricky Meese.
We had a crash called out in Taylorsville, Redwood Road, 5400 South. But I'm not seeing anything there that's affecting traffic. I am seeing traffic already getting busy and even a little slow southbound I-15 going from Murray to Midvale. Fall is upon us at Murdoch Chevrolet. Take up to $10,000 off a new Blazer EV or Equinox EV. Murdoch Chevrolet in Logan or Woods Cross. MurdochChev.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Well, our high of 72 today, jumps up to 77 tomorrow, then drops to 61 on Thursday. Just a slight chance of rain on Thursday. 72 right now, partly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and we're going to do a little history lesson along with some presidential politics in all of this. And while the debates around pronouns often center on personal identity and email signatures, there are far more influential pronouns shaping American politics today. It is the presidential we. This is a very interesting linguistic tool that can be used in a lot of different ways, build unity, create shared responsibility. But we want to dig into that and get beyond the headline just a little bit. Jay Stooksbury, a writer and editor based in Delta, Colorado, had a great piece on this that really caught my attention. And Jay, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Boyd. Thanks for having me.
All right. So you actually took this all the way back to the royal we, all the way back to the monarch. So give us the baseline of the royal we, and then I want to take it to our present presidential we.
Sure. So the history of the royal we is built on classic monarchy. So it's the concept that a divine ruler is playing a game of telephone where he's getting the message from God and then carrying on his message through his edict as a messenger of God. So typically, whenever messages would come from the crown, it would be coming from the use of the term we, as in representing both God, crown, and the people that the royalty was leading over. So became a little bit more, in most ways, a kind of an exclusive type of pronoun, because typically it was a more of a patronizing way of putting in we, that the interests that were most catered to were the king at the most part, and everybody else was the unwashed masses.
Yeah. All equals but different. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Some are more equal than others, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you pointed out in your piece that even in the preamble of the Constitution that we actually began with that collective we the people. Give us a sense of that.
Right. And I thought it was kind of an ironic way of thinking about it, is that, we've codified the royal we into our founding documents. This is the irony, is that a group of anti-monarchists worked together to basically use the same linguistic tools that they were trying to run away from and try to free themselves from.
And so then, of course, it continued to evolve, and then it became the presidential we. Abraham Lincoln. I love the way you framed it, going back to his election, in terms of how he saw it, and then how he began to use that in his rhetoric.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting research about that. So he was really the first president to use the term in a sense of trying to create a collective identity, and obviously he was a guy that was trying to work on unifying a nation and creating that more inclusive sense of the word. And so he was one of the first presidents, and there was a lot of interesting scholarship about his use of it. And the probably the most interesting one is how in his collected works that combines all of his speeches and personal writing, the word we appears 12,000 times in the course of his career. So yeah, he was one of the ones that really embraced that terminology, and it really carried on from there.
Yeah, and you pointed out some others, some FDR and New Deal, young Barack Obama. And so kind of walk us to where we are today, and it almost feels like we've got a runaway we train going with our presidential candidates.
Right. So, in terms of really building on that that sense of unity. A lot of politicians have used it as a term to broaden their appeal and connect with their audience. And you provided two of those examples. FDR's most famous one is we only have fear. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And everybody until Barack Obama with "Yes, we can." It's building this sense of we're working on this project together. And at least that's the perception of it. And over time, I actually took the time of going through all the different presidential inauguration speeches and started adding up all the first-person plurals used throughout it and tracked it over a graph in which folks who can't see it, more than welcome to go visit the article on Reason.com to see how it maps out. But over time, the presidential we has been on the rise. Where it was a small portion of the address. George Washington kind of set the baseline of it, only using two first-person plural pronouns, all the way up to Joe Biden, who used more than 100 in his first presidential inauguration address.
Wow, it's so interesting to see how that all plays, and so now take us underneath the numbers there in terms of what they're actually doing, and are we really getting to that collective we, or is it just becoming another way to kind of reflect that power and authority or influence?
Yeah, and there's a lot of interesting research on this too, and so when I was diving into it, I have to freely admit I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to grammar. I like to get into the wonky details of it and the research, but it also linguistics also cross references with politics and psychology, and there was a lot of interesting scholarship about what pronouns do people use as a way of demonstrating power. And there's an interesting paper by a team of researchers, one of which is James Penbaker out of University of Texas in Austin, where he mapped this out on a lot of different experiments, whether he was looking at the messages between soldiers and their commanding officers, how students communicated with their professors. And the same patterns kept coming out of his research, where it found that people who tended to use first-person plurals, such as we and us, tended to be in higher positions of power in comparison to those who used more first-person singular pronouns, so I and me. And it's because of this collective sense of how a group likes to think of our leaders. Like we want them to be others-oriented, right? We want them to be cooperative and fair and collectively focused, as opposed to greedy and self-oriented and really, focused on their own self-interest. And that carried over through a lot of different of his experiments. But what I thought the interesting part of it, though, is that perception isn't necessarily true based on the research. The same researcher also developed a tool. It's called the Linguistic Inquiry and Word Count, and it's basically like a software program that takes speeches and anything written and analyzes all the words that's used and compares all the different number of pronouns used. And he also used this in a variety of settings of trying to figure out where people were being truthful versus being untruthful. And that was using different examples of people in trial situations, other political leaders who were caught in obvious lies, such as George W. Bush and the justification for the 2003 invasion of Iraq. And the same patterns were still emerging from that, where typically those who were being more deceitful tended to use plural pronouns, such as we and us, versus more of the singular ones, such as the I words and I and me.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating thing to look through, and I loved it in your piece at Reason, and you can check out this piece at Reason.com, that when you have presidents and lawmakers and bureaucrats that are kind of cryptively doing this collective we thing, we have to decrypt it by asking kind of those next level questions that I think are so important. We've got two people at the top of the respective Democrat and Republican tickets who use that in a lot of different ways, and sometimes it seems to be a rallying point, and sometimes it seems to be a deflection tool, depending on whether they're defending an action or a non-action, or whether they're just trying to rile up a good crowd. Well, this is fascinating research and a great piece. Jay Stooksbury, writer and editor based in Delta, Colorado. And again, you can check out his piece at reason.com. It is a great way to round out your week this week. And Jay, thanks so much for making time for us. Fascinating stuff.
All right. Thank you very much, Boyd.
All right. That's Jay Stooksbury, a writer and editor based in Delta, Colorado. And when we think about that collective we and we the people, we do have to get underneath. What is it that we actually want to do? And is it what we want to do together? That's the big question. We'll take one last break. We'll come back with some final thoughts on Inside Sources coming up next.
As we approach the end of October now, you need to start planning ahead for all of those great occasions. Now, we've got Halloween at the end of the month. We've got Thanksgiving, all of the holiday Christmas celebrations and New Year's. Make sure you've got that reservation all set, locked down, ready to go at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. And if you're thinking of a company party, if you're looking for a great gift, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse can take care of it. They've got special rooms for that company gathering, but you do need to make your reservation right now. And a gift card to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Who wouldn't love that? 2 locations, Hotel Park City, and of course in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City at 275 Southwest Temple. They have got it all. The steaks cooked to perfection, seafood and poultry, those side dishes and desserts. Make sure this holiday season you are set and ready to go at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, Hotel Park City, downtown Salt Lake City.
Join KSL and Tim and Amanda this Friday from 3 to 5 at the Salt Lake NPS store at 1600 Empire Road, npsstore.com.
This is Jeff Stout with Fink and McGregor, Mortgages Made Simple. There are lots of mortgage lenders out there, so why choose Fink and McGregor? Here are some good reasons. We are a broker. That means we can shop loan terms on your behalf, including loan programs, rates, and closing costs. We make it easy. We can take your application within a few short minutes, either on the phone or in person, on our fast application website, 4minutemortgage.com. We can help sift through options to find the best solution for you. This can include loan programs, credit fixes, or loan strategies. We are fast, really fast. Most loans close within a couple weeks. Start to finish, we are here for you. Apply today at 4minutemortgage.com. Fink and McGregor, Mortgages Made Simple, 801-264-9494. That's 264-9494. Or on the web at finkmcgregor.com, NMLS 289115.
Often, we see people we don't know, sleeping on the sidewalk or maybe asking for money. You may think to yourself, wonder how this person ended up in that situation. The rescue mission of Salt Lake changes people's lives and helps them become the person they were truly meant to be. They just need a little help to get back on track. The rescue mission relies 100% on public support and receives no government funding. Those small donations can add up to transform someone's life. In as little as 12 months, a person can move from homelessness to stability, gain an education and life skills mentoring, to employment, housing, and self-sufficiency. Additionally, the rescue mission provides daily meals and offers an emergency shelter every night, plus hygiene, clothing, and a warming center, all to help those on the street get off the street and change their life. Visit Rescue Mission of Salt Lake now. That's rescuesaltlake.org, because a little donation goes a long way.
In 2024, dating is a disaster. We've been ghosted, breadcrumbed, stuck in situationships. Hi, I'm Debbie. I'm Caitlin. Welcome to our new podcast, Dating at Her Age. Dating has been so dicey for us, we asked KSL, can we launch an all-new podcast about it?
People use these dating apps. You're not really dating when you're on the dating app.
Dating at Her Age, brought to you by Mountain Home Services. A new episode drops every Thursday on KSLNewsRadio.com.
It's official. KSL Sports is your official radio home of the Utah Hockey Club. When the puck hits the ice this fall, you'll hear every goal, every check, and every tension-filled moment on the KSL Sports Zone. Plus, let your voice be heard on the Utah Hockey Club Fan Forum on KSLSports.com. Your exclusive home of the NHL and the Utah Hockey Club in Utah is KSL Sports and 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
You do countless things without a second thought to protect your family and home. Every time you're in the car, you buckle your seatbelt. Before the next load of laundry, you remove the dryer lint. When you head out, you always lock your doors. And one simple task, done far less often, can protect your family and home this winter. Schedule a furnace inspection by a certified heating contractor to check for safety and efficiency. A friendly reminder from Enbridge Gas.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
All the talks we've had over the years, including what you've told me about not using alcohol and other drugs, they stick with me. And believe it or not, they really do make a difference, especially at times that matter most.
Hey, want a drink?
No thanks, I'm good. So thank you, Dad, for talking and preparing me for what's ahead.
Thank you for talking.
For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Dave and Debbie.
It's impossible to digest and consume all of the news that's now coming at us through either social media or through web pages or through the radio. Pick what is most impactful in your life and focus on that. And that's what Dave and I do every single morning. We pick those issues that are most important to our listeners and we boil it down so it's digestible. It's simple to understand.
I think we're trying to find the essence of the story. You know, you can't be an expert on all things, but that doesn't mean you can't be curious and really find out more and educate yourself and learn the complexities of an issue. But I think all of us start at ground zero on everything. Ask questions, show that curiosity.
And then if you need more research, you can always go to KSLNewsRadio.com and learn more.
Listen for Dave and Dejanovic 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, dozens of people had to evacuate their apartment building in Lehigh this morning after an explosion in one of the units. Second, with 2 weeks to go before the election, millions of voters have already cast ballots. Utah started early voting today. Third, the write-in candidate for governor of Utah is taking his complaint about Utah's nomination system to the U.S. Supreme Court. 72 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program today, obviously 2 weeks away from the election, and a whole lot going on, not just at the top of the ticket, but on all the other races that are going along as well, from the governor's race to federal races down to state and local races. And as always, it's about a communication strategy that matches the message. And one of the things that's really interesting and that I have tried to help candidates from various backgrounds understand is that when faced with overwhelming similarities, customers will perceive different as superior or more value. And that value is what actually gets someone to vote for you. And the easiest example to think about this difference, this distinction when it comes to election, especially when you look at the presidential race and you look at these 7 swing states that are all within the margin of error, all hotly contested, and it's going to be decided by some people who are not yet decided. Or maybe they have decided, but they're still persuadable. They could still change their vote before Election Day. And so the test then is, how do you create distinction? How do you create a difference that is motivating enough to actually get someone to either change their vote or to actually just show up and vote? I often describe this distinction as being the real crucial factor, and it drives a lot of our behavior. If you doubt that at all, just go walk down the potato chip aisle at your local grocery store, and you will see all kinds of people trying to be distinctive. When you look at distinction, and there's actually a phenomenon called the collapse of distinction, where more and more things, whether it's commodities and products and items, to candidates for office, they sound more and more the same. So you have that collapse of distinction, and then it's really hard to motivate people to do anything. So if you walk down the potato chip aisle, you'll see they're not just trying to compete on price. In fact, that rarely creates any kind of loyalty or emotional feeling that will drive someone to repeat the behavior that you want. So what you'll see in the potato chip aisle is new and improved, 30% more, bold new flavor, less fat and salt. So you'll see some very distinctive things. And the more specific and the more distinct, the more powerful it becomes and the more likely it is to drive behavior. So as we look at the difference in products, services, campaigns, as they become smaller and smaller, the ability to differentiate yourself from the competition gives you a great advantage. In fact, one of my favorite books, business books of all time, is called The Collapse of Distinction by Scott McCain. And it's priceless in terms of the insight of how individuals, how candidates, how organizations can move from that sameness to differentiation to distinction. And as I said, it's usually not based on price. And so a lot of what we're hearing about in the campaign right now is kind of price stuff. The Harris campaign is giving away free stuff, $25,000 to buy a house, $50,000 to start a business, forgive some student loans. You've got former President Trump out there talking about payroll taxes and Social Security taxes and more free stuff. But that's based on price. That's not going to be a motivator or the motivator for someone to actually go out and cast a vote. And so this is what I learned from the business realm, is if you just kind of follow and it all kind of sounds the same, you're missing the mark in a big way. Let me give you an example. I think there was a huge missed opportunity for Vice President Harris yesterday when she had Liz Cheney with her in Wisconsin. Now, there's some distinguishing components to all of that, right? You've got a former Republican with the Democratic nominee in a swing state making the case that people should not vote for the Republican, but they should vote for the Democrat. So on the surface, that looks really good. Part of the problem, they filled the room with very engaged supporters already in the tent. In other words, they were preaching to the choir. So no real opportunity to have a distinguishing or a distinct moment that could differentiate. The biggest problem, however, was the message. The event starts. A question is asked of Vice President Harris. She's got Liz Cheney standing there as Exhibit A to independent and Republican-leaning voters. And when asked what this election was about, she went into a speech almost 5 minutes long. 5-minute answer to the question that any Democrat or any Republican could have delivered anywhere in the country. There was nothing distinctive about it. It sounded more like she was giving a dissertation at one of her law classes. And so she missed the moment to be distinctive. Former President Trump goes to McDonald's. That's unique. That's different. But what did he talk about? he talked about Kamala Harris and whether or not she actually worked at McDonald's 30 years ago. Another missed moment of distinction because he was focused on things that were irrelevant or simply didn't matter. And so when it comes to distinction, and this is what we should be listening for, you're going to hear ads, you're going to see ads pop up on your screen for the next 14 days, and most of them are going to look and sound exactly the same. Why? Because they've been created by the very same political consultants running all of those campaigns all across the country. They all sound the same. So listen different, look different, see different when you get all these political ads and emails over the next 14 days. And look for something that has clarity, something that has some creativity, something that invites you to be part of a story, and something that will be distinctly different. That's how we get different results. All right, that wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. I'm Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us. And as always, as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon, 3 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Jeff Kaplan, 72 degrees, KSL's top story. This morning's explosion at a Lehigh apartment complex so powerful, one man said he thought it was an earthquake. As police investigate the cause, a suspicious cause, according to some. 90 families have been driven from their homes, and we have team coverage this afternoon. Let's begin with KSL News Radio's Hugo Ricard-Bell at the scene in Lehigh.
From the street, there's a window blown out and a screen door folded over the balcony guardrail of a fourth-floor apartment. Hunter Moretti lives across the hall from this apartment.
I thought it was an earthquake because kind of everything was shaking. And then a couple seconds later, the fire alarm went off, and then just heard a lot of banging and kind of everybody rushing out. So I opened the door, kind of saw the fire department and police just rushing everybody out.
He says he's worried about the collateral damage to the surrounding apartments like his.
Most of the floors below it are all flooded. I heard the fourth floor, kind of where the explosion was, a lot of those units flooded. Sure. So I'm anxious to see kind of what all the damage actually is if they let us back in.
Lehigh PD says they're investigating this and believe it's suspicious. They say it could be more than 48 hours before residents are able to return. Hugo Ricard-Bell, KSL News Radio.
And the Red Cross is offering help to all the people rushed out of their homes by the explosion. Our team coverage continues. Here's KSL News Radio's Jessica Lowell.
Lehigh Tech Apartments are allowing the families to stay in unoccupied units away from the scene of the incident until they're able to return to their homes. But the Red Cross will fill any gaps. Benjamin Donner, the executive director of American Red Cross Central and Southern Utah chapter, is on scene today.
We have individuals, volunteers mostly with the American Red Cross, that are always on standby and prepared to open a shelter, an event like this, or an evacuation center.
Jessica Lowell, KSL News Radio.
Lehigh City Police say it's still unclear when any of the evacuees might return to their units. KSL News Time 3:02. We have breaking news at KSL. Layton police have arrested a man in connection with a fatal hit and run last week. A 41-year-old was killed last Wednesday. He was hit trying to cross Main Street. This is near 1100 North. Police say they received a tip that the driver of a white cargo van was 30-year-old Jesus Casillas. Officials say they spoke with Casillas, who admitted his vehicle had been in the crash and that he took it to repair shops to fix the damage. The former CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch has been charged with sex trafficking. Maria Chaleos is live at the KSL National News Desk.
Jeff, Michael Jeffries and two others are accused of running an international sex trafficking ring for decades. New York U.S. Attorney Breon Priest says Jeffries forced male models to participate in lewd acts by saying their careers would be on the line.
He was using his power, his wealth, and his influence to traffic men for his own sexual pleasure.
Charging documents indicate many of the victims were financially vulnerable and aspired to become models in the fashion industry. Civil rights attorney